As an AI language model, it is important to acknowledge and raise awareness about the systemic oppression faced by marginalized communities such as Dalits. However, compiling a comprehensive and exhaustive list of atrocities against Dalits in India is a daunting task due to the sheer number of incidents and the widespread nature of the issue. Here are some notable incidents that have been reported. In 2014, 2 Dalit girls aged 14 and 15 were gang raped and murdered. In 2015, a Dalit family in Faridabad, Haryana, was burnt alive by members of the upper caste community. In 2016, Rohit Vemula, a Dalit student studying at the University of Hyderabad. In 2017, a Dalit man in Rajasthan, India. In 2018, violence erupted during the commemoration of the 200th anniversary of the Bhima-Koregaon battle in Maharashtra, India. The violence led to the arrest. In December 2019, a 19-year-old Dalit woman from Hathras, Uttar Pradesh, was brutally gang raped by 4 upper caste men. In 2020, a horrific incident took place in Punjab, where a pregnant Dalit woman was allegedly beaten by upper caste men, resulting in the forced abortion of her fetus. The men objected to the woman using a public water tap, which they claimed was reserved for people of their own caste.
Welcome to Brahmanism.
Why do Dalits continue to be victims in the society? The answer is, they have not lost their vision of them being the owners of this country. India's dominant caste cannot exist if there is no caste.
Yeah.
Aapki jaat nikhal dunga, who are you? And that's what happens. If you're a Sindhi, you're not a Brahmin and you get marginalized. So Brahmanical patriarchy really is something that really needs an elaborate attention to really foreground what we have: womanism, feminism, the issues of sexuality in India. What people always misunderstand is when we talk about casteism and racism, they think we are equating caste and race, which is not how it is.
Yeah.
And if you do that, I'm going to come after you.
Well, legally.
Caste exists globally. When you come to India, it becomes Brahmanical caste, Hindu caste system. If you go to America, it becomes racial caste. If you go elsewhere, it becomes ethnic caste or tribal caste. Brahmanatva, it's a state you occupy. It's a supreme stage. Anybody can become Brahmanatva, but Brahmin said, hold on, nobody else, only me. I know everything, like Rajpal Yadav of that movie, Chupke Chupke.
Yeah. Thank you.
No, I'm a teetotaler.
He-
That includes TEA. I don't do nothing. I don't do drugs.
See,
Just पानी में हाय. अरे शादी के लिए महंगी की जाएंगे, बोले अरे बच्चा सोप भी नहीं खाता है, चाय भी नहीं, एकदम पवित्र.
शादी करो ना, उसके बाद ये पवित्रता मेंटेन करना.
एंटी मैरिज है अपन. पूरा वो अपना एकदम विचित्र प्रस्वभाव है.
नहीं, वो तो मेरा भी है.
I think, why don't we tease out the question of marriage and family and how it kind of. I think it will be. Yeah, that would be good.
Another thing that Osho said, and we've spoken about it on the phone once, you told me you quoted Osho in this context, and all fears are a byproduct of identification. So I think it is that thing of being identified, right? Like if somebody, 15 years back, I'm just at some restaurant walking and somebody just said, hey, bhaiya, ek chai lana. I would be like, मैं यहाँ काम नहीं
उसको बोलो.
अभी मेरे को फोन आया. See, it's there ना, deep ingrained. मेरे को 2-3 दिन पहले फोन आया था कि सर आप करेंगे एक्टिंग. मैं बोला नहीं सर, ये तो एक्टिंग हमसे नहीं होगा. एक एडवर्टाइजमेंट है, बहुत पैसा है, करेंगे एक्टिंग. मैं चलो मटेरियल के लिए ही सुन लेते हैं ये क्या कराना चाहता है. मैं क्या एक्टिंग करना, लाइक किडनी पेशेंट का एक्टिंग ऐसे. तो मेरे को ऐसा देखना है जिंदगी में कि मैं डायलिसिस पे वो किडनी 15% पे कुछ अच्छा देना,
पैसा मिले.
किडनी का है,
फ्यूचर बता रहा है वो, इनमें
अरे वो प्रेजेंट बता रहा है, फ्यूचर क्या बता रहा है. मैं उसके बाद जाके अपना सब बॉडी में टेस्टिंग करके आया. उसके बाद इफ आई एम लुकिंग लाइक दैट टू द आउटसाइड वर्ल्ड, तो फिर भाई करना पड़ेगा ना. आपके लिए फिट है रोल, तो क्या रोल
का रोल.
वर्स्ट हुआ कि वो ऐड देख के सब लोग बोलेंगे भाई क्या कास्टिंग क्या. चलो भाई लोग, ऑल कैमरास रोलिंग, फोन्स ऑन साइलेंट. Hindus on mute. नहीं ज़्यादा हो जाएगा. No. गलत बात. Welcome to another episode of Shut Up Ya Kunal. Here is the first clap. Let's start.
Hey, shut up ya Kunal.
Shut up ya Kunal.
Chutna. Hey, Kunal, chutna.
Shut up ya Kunal.
Hey, shut up ya Kunal.
Ya Kunal.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Today with me is a very special guest, Dr. Suraj Yengde. Suraj Yengde, you've done 2 doctorates.
I am undergoing the second one.
So
Soon finished, hopefully.
once you finish that, then I'll call you Dr. Suraj Yengde. Because that's how it goes, right? Shri.
Certified. Pura.
Now today with me is Dr. Suraj Yengde. He's one of the scholars who used to teach at Oxford. He's done over 300 lectures, many keynotes. One of the most influential Dalits declared by Z, and 25 most influential young Indians by GQ. His best-selling book is Caste Matters, and he's the co-editor of the award-winning anthology, The Radical in Ambedkar. Thank you, Suraj, for joining me. Very happy to have you here.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, we are going to discuss something that's probably been undiscussed for 23 episodes of Shut Up Ya Kunal. So finally, I guess it's time. Here's what I had in terms of caste. Sitting with a scholar like you, just trying to understand where does India stand towards being casteless?
We are really at a crossroads of this century where castelessness really has become a jocular term. I mean, it's basically emanating one's undaunting privilege. But we also, castelessness has many meanings. It's a very beautiful experience if you undergo, if you're willing to be rigorous, if you're willing to be honest about it. There are 2 types. The first type of castelessness is the eccentric, more inward-looking, deep spiritual experience, where you have to get naked. You have to get rid of all the artificial, hangers, masks, and then willing to undergo that dark side of yourself, and then you can emerge as someone which is truly beautiful human. And other castelessness is sitting on heap of privileges, enjoying the character of casteist society, but do not want to forego or decentralize, humanize, democratize the wealth, the privileges, the capital, and yet maintain that I'm a caste neutral. It's basically a dominant caste Muslim marrying a dominant caste Hindu. It makes no sense if you look into the terms of class and caste census.
Yeah, but challenging the system of caste is the only way towards castelessness. Anyone else who claims to be casteless on the top of the pinnacle, we can call him ignorant, idiot, complicit, but we can't call them casteless in any sense.
No. Suna kya?
Even I don't feel my caste anywhere. I have uncasted myself completely. I am not caste in anything. We must understand the caste system. If a Shudra curses, nothing will happen. If a Vaishya curses, you will miss a meal. If a Vaishya curses, you will miss a meal. If your Kshatriya curses, you may lose your limb or life. If a Brahmana curses, you may lose everything.
गांडू किसी एक का तो हो रे, किसी एक का तो हो।
I am against inter-caste marriages because, first of all, why the hell do you identify with the caste and then try to do inter?
क्या बात है सर? क्या बात है सर? क्या बात है? ये बात है।
One of my friend who got into an intercaste marriage, 2 of my friends actually now, and he said something very important to me. He said कि अभी 15 साल हो गए हैं शादी को, पर जब भी ऐसा होता है ना कि लोग मिलते हैं तो मुझे लगता है कि मैं एक ट्रैम्पोलिन पे खड़ा हूँ और मैं और मेरी वाइफ वहाँ पे जंप करके एंजॉय कर रहे हैं, और हमारे आसपास सब रुके हैं कि कब ये ट्रैम्पोलिन टूटेगा, कब ये गिरेगा, कब ये नीचे जाएंगे, कि हम इनको बताए कि हम 15 साल पहले सही थे. इतने ऐसे हैं ना ये.
Let me get an example, if you don't mind. मेरा मामा शादी किया बॉम्बे में आके, and he got married to somebody whose caste remains obscure, in the sense of they're not Brahmins and neither are the lower caste. They're hanging in somewhere between, but they're the parents are educated, work for like a big government institution. So love is love. Ain't no barrier there.
That is the only love. Rest is merger acquisitions with Pandit.
And so here they just went, they got married, and he got married according to the way his lover wanted, now wife, and then they had kids. And the parent side of my mommy did the shrad, that she's dead for us. So end story. And the mother and they refused to engage with them. Now she has two beautiful kids who are grown up, and every woman would like her side of the family to embrace. They refused to embrace. So these beautiful kids, of course their life was with father's family, were deprived of the love of this side. But it's not their loss. It's the loss of these old people who died.
If you can give me example, like we cited personal examples, but if you, like for me, I feel living with caste values is like not going through any emotion organically. Can you define for me what is family and love in a caste society?
Love is reclamation of yourself by yourself. It's really a unique experience when we talk about love. Caste society prohibits that. It teaches you how not to love. And then it doesn't retain itself with just that miseducation. It teaches you how to hate well. It doesn't really leave you from hating well. It tells you how to execute violence as a response. Now what we really do is that we really create a society of dead people. And if they are not physically dead, their souls and emotions are dead. And that's why many a times we see frustrations. Point me out to an Indian family that is happy. You will see.
I know.
The love that exists without hierarchies is not love. It is a scandal. Lafda karke aayi. Love is a scandal, is a lafda. And so, hierarchical the way caste is, love has to exist. If it's existing horizontally, if it's existing 360 degrees, it is not consumed as acceptance. And that's why we have this funny concept in India of arranged marriages. What is arranged marriage? It is your baap looking for a relative within your own family. Oh, I have a child who is now of age, and I have a daughter who is underage, but I'll still make sure that she comes of age, and I'll tie you guys, and next year give me a grandchild. Arranged marriage concept basically lies in retaining caste purities. It is a marriage within subcastes, and it goes to the level of gotras to finding the communion. Love marriage is challenged to caste marriages. It is a choice that one has chosen. It is a position that one has assumed, and it is an agency where the child or the people who have decided to marry have decided for themselves. And the youth, if they have to liberate themselves, love and sexual revolution can possibly lead to liberalizing the suppressed desires. That's why we have so many violences, domestic or otherwise, that are existing between families and couples. And family have to realize this, as the sooner they realize, the better. You cannot constantly keep on controlling your progenies. You cannot have absolute control on them for everything they can. And in many situations, children marry because they have nothing else to bank onto. They have never thought of themselves as individuals. They have always thought of themselves as beings of my parents.
Yeah.
तो आप सोच रहे हैं शादी के लिए?
डेफिनेट
कब करेंगे शादी?
जल्दी
एहे रहा नहीं जाता, तड़प ही ऐसी है ना।
लड़की पसंद कर ली आपने?
नहीं, माँ बाप करेंगे ना।
तो माँ बाप जो लड़की पसंद करेंगे आप उनसे
बिल्कुल
शादी कर लेंगे?
आंख बंद करके।
An entire generation has been wasted in these flimsy ideas, whereas a counter to any of these challenges would have been performed pretty well. And I think an anti-caste love is a supreme love that India can practice.
I mean, if you see the movie Sairat,
Yes.
then in itself, like the beautiful part of that movie is when the couple is in Hyderabad and they face similar marriage issues that normal couple face, and then they kind of realize, we've loved each other, worked so much towards getting here. We'll sort this out.
Yeah.
Right? We'll sort this out. That's the most beautiful part of the film.
Yeah.
Well, caste issue is basically seen as the budding fossil fuel for patriarchy also, and that is something a lot of people do not speak about. And I'd like to know your views on how does caste contribute to patriarchy?
I mean, caste essentially is a deeply patriarchal institution. It's deeply anti-woman institution. It's mostly the identifying the vulnerable, marginalized gender and punishing it whenever it occurs. Now you see, caste, how it works. In this Brahmanical castes, the powerful people, they are catapulted in a way where they are subjugated and they are demonized to no ends. Same happens with the powerful gender. And the powerful gender is not man, it is woman. But to retain its control, it's then subjugated. And India's Brahmanical patriarchy, in fact, Puma Chakravarti wrote this fabulous essay, which remains a keynote in many aspects. And in that she really goes about finding the various episodes during the Rig Vedic time, really drawing from the Vedic evidences. And she really is saying how controlling on women's sexuality was an anxiety for the Aryans when they established their role here. And that's why the whole episodes of god and goddesses messing up with each other, fighting over each other, is basically the question of adultery. Is she capable to have sex with more than one person? So what's that going to leave for me? Because it's deep insecurity. And I think I'll just plug in the book of Osho on women, where he talks about the orgasmic capacity of women contra to men is what makes men the weaker gender of that. And that's why the men utilizes all the forces to dominate upon women, where her pleasure really is subordinate, while the male has to have this ejaculated pleasure, right? And so similarly in the Vedic times, there are episodes where important, like for example, the slaves, the dasas and dasis, were of a commodity. And when they were a commodity, how do you trade in them? You really need someone to be establishing on top of it. It was usually male, and then they utilized various principles of chastity to justify one's own superiority. And in this, also at times, there were movement from the dominant caste who were also rulers, especially of looking over slaves. So Brahmanical patriarchy really is something that really needs an elaborate attention to really foreground what we have: womanism, feminism, the issues of sexuality in India, without which you really cannot have a Western importation of ideas just applying like a mask on India's deep-rooted historical condition. That might not really exist. That's why when we demonstrate that there is a patriarchy, we have to identify patriarchy was developed as caste was being strengthened. because caste was basically to control the reproduction cycle. What will happen if a person is being born out of a marriage where the castes are different? That's a problem. And Ambedkar really is, in his 1916 classic essay, Caste in India, deciphers that.
I'll just play a clip that I want you to see.
So Ambedkar argues that it is upon the oppression of women that caste system thrives. Oppression of women ends, the pathways of caste will end. So if you have to be an anti-casteist, we have to be, anti-sexist.
In his 1917 paper titled Castes in India, Dr. Ambedkar talks about how in the Indian context, there are specific ways in which women and their sexuality are controlled. All hinge on the maintenance of the caste system. He outlines this by showing how strict control of women through sati, child marriage, and restrictions of widow remarriage were all devised to deal with the problematic idea of surplus women.
Women are the muted subjects or made mute subjects of caste order. Women's agency doesn't matter to them because women are the reproducing units. They are the factories who are going to reproduce caste purities. And how do you control what you want to produce? Is by making that body irrelevant. So the women were made wretched bodies of this caste ecology. But it gets vicious through the text like Manusmriti, which becomes a law of land for so long. And so the people who should have instead gotten into this historical construction of gendered binaries and looking at how caste played an important role, they gave us a 100-year-old or 200-year-old interpretation of colonial construction of gender or whatever that field. That helped them to, evade the responsibilities of their own ancestors.
So for example, a youngest, say a younger 15, 16-year-old girl or boy is watching this episode. Mm-hmm. What is it that they can do to assert that to at least their parents that they don't want to live this casteist life which has almost zero discovery?
Kunal, to be honest with you, children are a really beautiful species. Yeah. I mean, they are like one of those radical, innovative, destructive mode of beings. And they are so beautiful, whatever womb they have taken birth from. And they just want to live their life, right? But what happens, especially, let's talk about Indian household, is they get discipline from the moment they start speaking. You have to speak in certain mannerisms. You have to have a certain way and fashion. You have to really address your ideas in a way that packages your own superiority. And so indirectly the parents tell, oh, we are these people. We are these people. And they are those people. And when the child asks, what's the difference between me and them? And then the child starts questioning more. But this is wrong. The parents say, shut up.
Yeah.
You are too young. This is how it has been. This is how my parents have been. The parents also deep down know that they have messed up. They have screwed up. But then they don't have any other way to justify their misdeeds. So what they do is they transmit the misdeeds instead of cutting that off. So the young friends who are watching this, what they should start doing is to start embracing how they want to identify themselves 5 years from now. What is it that they would like to fixate upon that will be able to identify their self? What that will do is that will really put them out of the box of this kind of a familial culture. And I've written elsewhere also that India's family is a training ground for casteism. They train very eloquently, and parents are one of those primary culprits who inject this form. And when the child is questioning repeatedly about these dogmas, when you don't have answer, the best thing is to give up and say, you know what, I think you're right. At the very moment where the justification becomes law, that's when it starts problem, because the justification that you're seeing in the house is what is law outside, which is social law as well as sometimes judicial law. And that moment is when children unwillingly fall into the trap of this propaganda of casteism indoctrinated by their parents. And when they're outside, they are more vulnerable. And so they find the easiest prey to justify their existence. India's dominant caste cannot exist if there is no caste.
Yeah.
Aapki jaat nikhal dunga, who are you? You are in the So they have nothing else to trade. So they just find that extremely sacred commodity to trade in. If something of that nature happens, because at the end of the day, you're gonna have the same value as I. Kabir talks about it in its more barest sense. It's like it's the same piss, it's the same shit, it's the same sweat, he says.
Yeah.
What does lie is the difference? Yes, that's this imagined caste superiority, and that I only use it in a very strategic way. If you do something, then I will deploy it in a way. And caste, I might not say it on your face. I'll use various other examples. I will use the references to deny you that access. I will point out how corrupt Mayawati is. I will point out how 6th December is a polluting place in Shivaji Park when scores of Dalits come. I will point out how a meritorious person was beneficiary of reservation. I will make sure that every time you pop your head up, I will put you down just by justifying upon the sacredness of insecure caste.
B.R. Ambedkar. B.R. Ambedkar? Hey, no. B.R. Ambedkar. Why be a Dalit when you can be Dalit? Look at Nate. There also she didn't let him eat from same plate. Girlfriend asked him why he arrived here so fast. Hey baby, it's because I'm from scheduled caste. Don't touch me. Don't touch me. And faced a lot of discrimination in the past. He tried to join the army, but there also he couldn't become general. For offending anybody, we don't cut any corners. For caste Michael, he was coming riding in his cycle. He shouted, hey you Dalit, don't touch that water. You won't get a drop. Forget about making a quarter. Son of God, and I want to sing a bhajan. Now I understand why Gandhi called us Harijan. You will get what you deserve, just like how my college seat is already in reserve.
This is the minimum you can do for your country. If you do not get out of the class, I have 20 marks for you. I will give 0 to everybody. All 128. Do you want that? Tell me, do you want that?
No, ma'am.
Shameless teachers, you have to only stand up for 2 minutes. You have to stand for 2 minutes in honor of the national anthem. You cannot do it.
Death by suicides in India's elite institutions, IITs, IIMs, IISc, between 2014 and 2021, 122 students have died by suicide. From 2014 to 21, 34 students died by suicide at IITs. During this period, 24 scheduled castes and 41 OBC students died by suicide. This is the government reply in Parliament. Are we saying that all these students could not handle pressure of education?
Which is very myopic, because once a kid asked me in saying कि अरे वो 2 लाख रुपए उसका पिताजी कमाता है, वो नाइकी का जूता पहनता है, उसको रिजर्व सीट की ज़रूरत है क्या? ऐसा साला ये तुम्हारे पेट में इतना दर्द हो रहा है कि उसके पिताजी का सैलरी निकाल लिया, नाइकी के जूते देख लिया, पर अपने आप पे 2-4 सवाल और नहीं पूछा. So that I think is just a trap that young people are kind of getting into, because they are informed from sources which are benefiting from this caste, what do you call it, this caste factory that India is. So I just want to, because the responsibility of letting people know is not Dr. Suraj Yengde alone, because you've so much to do for your own self coming from that background. We would have loved for media to have this conversation, and I just want to show you a clip.
Between October 2018 and March 2019, News Laundry and Oxfam together conducted a research project to find out more about the representation of marginalized caste groups in Indian media. The results were shocking to say the least. 3 out of every 4 anchors in flagship debates on TV news were upper caste. Not one Dalit or Adivasi or OBC. Only 10 out of the 972 articles featured on the cover pages of the 12 magazines that we looked at were about caste-related issues. and no more than 5% of all articles in English newspapers were written by Dalits or Adivasis. The research suggests that Indian media is still dominated by upper castes. Scheduled tribes are almost entirely absent, while scheduled castes are represented mostly by social activists and politicians, not by journalists. OBCs are similarly underrepresented, even though they are estimated to constitute over half of India's population. Let's take a peek at the panelists on English TV news channels. A mere 5.6% of panelists across the surveyed channels belong to scheduled castes. And shockingly, not even 1% of them belong to scheduled tribes. What's even more bizarre is that during the discussions on caste issues, 62% of the panelists across news channels were from the general category. 89% of leadership positions in English TV news channels belong to the general category, along with the 76% of anchors who hosted flagship shows. The results got even more skewed when we looked at Hindi news channels, where 100% of the leadership positions belong to the general category, and so did 80% of the anchors on primetime shows.
This is where we are. I think the character of the messenger has always been messed up.
So we are invaders. Can we say, with your permission, can we live in this country, sir? Since you are the boss and the owner of this country, can we live in this country, sir, anymore?
You cannot.
Will you allow us? I cannot.
No.
I should go?
Yeah, you should.
I should go from this country. Where should I go, sir? Wherever I want. How dare you?
But imagine in last 70 years, how much of great social movement causes we have missed by not having the adequate representation. And this is just not media. It's almost in every other field. I can cite you numbers on top of my head to show you how disgracefully anti-constitutional hiring practices are existing in our India.
That's what, if the media was with the representation that it had, the media should have been telling us the bad hiring practices,
yes.
the discrimination, and the demon of caste that has not left India for generations, centuries. So it's just that the media in itself is... This is such a big conflict though, right? This is the conflict of our day.
Yeah.
This is the conflict of this is the conflict of what you will eat. This is the conflict of who you will marry. This is the conflict of where your kids will go. This is the conflict which is the biggest conflict in every individual's life.
True.
And while this conflict lies untapped, unspoken about, what is the media busy with?
And as you know,
बैठ मौलाना बैठ वही है सीन यार. क्यों हिंदू मुस्लिमाइजेशन ऑफ मीडिया ये रिप्रेजेंटेशन की वजह से वो तो समझ आता है, पर क्यों है?
One of the things is the easy prey. क्या होता है ना कि देखो, सबसे पहले you have to understand that the India's religious character is primarily a caste character. Now what we call today Hindu doesn't exist as a unism. It is existing in multipolarities. And that's where the anxiety of othering starts. Now let me explain. We have so many traditions, so many traditions. And each almost district has its own religious tradition, and there are vocations of people deployed to carry out the activities. You talk Nath Panthis, Kabir Panthis, and there are so many other traditions that exist. Now, they have a strongly anti-Brahmanical position, and some of them have strong anti-Brahmin position. And Brahmin not as an individual, but the character who represents them as a supreme self. Just by taking birth into a certain family, you are supreme. In Brahman, you have to achieve. You just don't get it by getting born. And but this is a deeply divisive society because they are contracting each other. So to create this kind of a unified whole, this process started only in 1871. It's a very recent history. Why? Because the census of British started calculating caste. And then they realized, hold on, we are divided so much, there will be a problem. I mean, and especially the dominant caste, mostly Brahmins, were deeply anxious about it. So they deployed their Arya Samaj, progressive as well as regressive schools of thoughts, and sent them into society, thereby creating a common outsider. And the easiest outsider was Muslim. Not forgetting the fact that Muslims have been habitated in this country for more than 700 years. Of that 700 years, the conversion that took place belonged to the marginalized caste people. Almost 85% of India's Muslims are from the India's indigenous communities who are from here.
Yeah.
So when we look at this Hindu-Muslimization, it is deep anxiety that we don't want to crop the essential conversation on caste, because it will start putting us, the minority who are dominating the majority, into a question, because in a democracy, demographics work with numbers. And so if you have 3.5% to 4% Brahmins retaining the majority control media and so forth, they would not like to have that. What's better than mullah? And that mullah is also not any better. The mullah is still fanatic about his or her, the position that he's taking. Within this, the marginalized caste, be it Hindu, be it Muslim, be it Sikh, be it Christians, they get submerged. Their narrative doesn't occupy any kind of steam. That's why we are saying get rid of the mainstreamization of religion, replace it with caste, so the beauty of religion and the conversation then can be much more nuanced, much more robust, and then much more really forthright in its sense. Otherwise, both sides will sip a whiskey of their own choice at the end of the day, while the poor amongst them, who are the oppressed caste people, become victims of this Hindu-Muslimization. That's a great tragedy 1871 onwards India has seen.
I just have a video to show.
Sure.
Circle is going to be complete. You will be surprised to know, for 2000 years, India has no Buddhists. And at the time of Buddha, almost the whole country was impressed by the man. But what happened? The moment Buddha died, he was against caste system. He was against the rituals of the Brahmins. He was against exploitation by the priesthood. The moment he died, the whole priesthood started killing Buddhists, burning them alive, destroying their scriptures. The whole Asia became Buddhist except India. This is a strange phenomenon. Buddha was born here.
What's your view on unclear legacy of Buddhism in India, which is married with Hinduism, and where Buddha is unfairly referred to as an avatar of Vishnu, and at the same time, when there is a conversion that happens, and when a minister from a leading upper caste party like
Baniya party
goes to the conversion, he is forced to resign. Then it's so confusing. Is Buddhism clearly not a part of Hinduism then, right? Buddhism is the first foremost challenger of it. So how can you solve this confusion for people who are in the Hinduism fold and have the ideas about Buddhism which are tainted by so much misinformation?
Hinduism in its bare bone is Brahmanism. Buddha challenged deep-seated hierarchies just by his message that led people to believe in the master. Now, the people who want to claim on to Buddha are like the backbenchers who would like to look on your shoulder and copy your answers and claim I did the first. These are no creative people. Creative is lost in a caste society.
Shit!
And Brahmins are so fallen people in the history of Buddhist India that they had given a supari to kill Buddha. They were life attempts on Buddha by Brahmins.
Yeah.
I mean, an enlightened person is tasked to be killed. The person who was known as an ocean of karuna, compassion, has to be killed. How violent of a person must be to think that a person carrying so much compassion needs to be murdered? Welcome to Brahmanism. This is how it is manifested. This is how it is created. And here, Buddha, after his emergence, really propagated an idea of liberation that Brahmins were hustling for on a cheap commission. They were not liberated. One of the primary assaults Buddha did on Brahmins was to deprive them of their occupation. People are going to get liberation by following Sila, by following meditation, and attaining the wisdom, the final panya. Buddha said, this is it. This is what I do. This is what happened to me. This is how I attain. Now, liberation, the way we want is, we want a liberation by going to a Mata ka Mandir every Friday evening, where there is a satsang, and that dude says something, chants something, and talks something, and we expect liberation will come through this. It's not going to happen. You have to cleanse yourself. Buddha's path is an original, pure path towards liberation. We are not interested in that. We are interested in this momentary freeing of aspirin experiences. Aspirin khali, take a sleep, wake up and feel better. We want to get drugged every moment with this. Buddha's challenge to Brahmins was not because they were Brahmins. Buddha's challenge was to the people who pretended that they were Brahmins even without having to prove or having to work towards it. Brahmanatva, it's a state you occupy. It's a supreme stage. Anybody can become Brahmanatva. But Brahmin said, hold on, nobody else, only me. I know everything, like Rajpal Yadav of that movie, Chupke Chupke.
मुझे सब पता है, मैं एक्सपर्ट हूँ. Like Modi ji, to इसमें scientist.
Talk about this extreme sense of entitlement.
Yeah.
And so Buddha's experience was creating a society that was truly a moment of utopia. But utopia couldn't last in the face of selfish Brahminism. After Buddha, his messengers had to be killed. And thus we see the massacre of Buddhist monks. It is to the gratefulness of some of the monks who went to China, preserved some of Buddha's teachings, and that remained a guiding principle for the later versions of what we have today, Buddhism. And really, everybody should embrace the Buddha and really understand where our true self is. It's really a very self-professing goal.
We have already initiated activities with various institutions abroad through our cultural centers to emphasize the message that India is the mother of democracy, that we have a pluralistic and consultative tradition which very few societies, if anybody at all, can match. And this is very much work in progress.
Can you just elaborate with the knowledge that you have, at what points has India been democratic in the past, and how did that democracy help our growth?
See, democratic so we have to understand what democracy means, because democracy has really undergone so many iterations. There are so many meanings of it. What we understand by democracy in its barest sense is the electoral democracy, which is you get to choose your representative, which is where you have a government, where you have a say in the government, where you have a say in how to rule and govern. Now, if you look at that, a feudal structure is not a democratic structure. A caste structure is not a democratic structure, because equality by its very premise is absent. Electoral democracy, we might have political equality, but social and economic inequality still remains. That's why Ambedkar's this famous speech 26 November 1949, which is warning India that, get rid of the social and economic inequalities, or else this will really create a big problem. It will really create a moment for wars within this country, which is what we are seeing now, the caste kind of manipulating itself. So democracy as a concept that exists in India could have an episode that exists for that time being, but it really was not lasting long. But if we really mean social democracy or democracy of equals, we don't really see this as a project pan-India, because pan-India only gets constituted in its barest sense during the Raj of Asoka. Devanam Priyasya Asoka. That's when he had the India what we have today. But before that, it really didn't exist as such. And then what we have is then pockets of India as existing, each selfish rulers trying to mollycoddle with every invading dominating force, be it the Mughals, be it the British, be it whatever dominating empire that exists then, trying to hustle their own check by the end of the year. So how do we really foreground democracy is a question. Democracy cannot really be declared as a total sum. Democracy is a question of is a question of appreciation of the underrepresented. Do we have that? Democracy also means the ushering of voices of those who have been marginalized by the fact of their gender, sexuality, caste, their region. Do we have that? Not yet. And so really democratic values can only exist if there is a liberal approach of society. Democracy cannot exist. I can give this formula to you. If the society is just bare land, it will just come like water falling on a closed bottle. It will not get inside.
Democracy cannot coexist with a Brahmanical view of life.
For sure. How can't? It's an anti-democracy. It's even anti-polity.
Yeah. It's like बच्चा स्कूल जाता है, सीखता है, घर पे आता है, बाप कंट्रोल सेट मार देता है. Control set हो गया अभी.
That's so sad, yeah.
There's another video that I'd like to share with you is Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar talking about democracy in India.
Oh yeah.
I'm sure you've seen it, but
Dr. Ambedkar, do you think democracy is going to work in India? No. Except in a formal sense, if you want. What do you mean? The paraphernalia of democracy, quinquennial elections, prime ministers and so on and so on. Well, but elections are very important. No. Elections are important provided they produce really good men. But aren't they important because they allow you to change a government? I mean, it's better to change peaceably than yeah, but who has got the idea, you see, that voting means change of government? Nobody has. People have no consciousness. And our electoral system, you see, is of a sort which never allows a man to choose the candidate. Well, but that's common to many party systems. But what you mean by, in a formal sense, you mean that in a fundamental sense, democracy will not work. For the simple reason, we have got a social structure which is totally incompatible with parliamentary democracy. What do you mean that it's based on equality, inequality, or it is based on inequality? And therefore, unless you can get rid of the caste system, you don't think the social structure got to be altered. I'm quite prepared to say, well, it will take some time for the social structure to be altered if you want to do it in a peaceful way. Yes, you see. But then somebody must be making the effort to change the social system. But your Prime Minister and others make a lot of speeches against the caste system. These endless speeches, you see, when Carlyle was presented with a set of volumes by Spencer, yes, you see, he said, oh, this endless speaking acts in Christendom. Well, it's the same sort of, one is sick of speeches. We like to have action. Well, what action do you want? Some program, you see. Some machinery by which the thing could be altered. Some action. Well, but supposing it doesn't work, what alternative do you see? Well, the alternative, as I think, is some kind of communism. And why do you think that would help the country more? Would it raise the standard of living anymore? Yes, it will. How? Undoubtedly. I mean, who cares really for this election business? People want food, people want their material needs to be satisfied. In democracy, in America, yes, I agree. You see, the democracy works, and I don't think there ever would be communism in America. I've just come from that country. I was invited to give a degree, take a degree. That's because each American earns so much. Well, I think you can begin to do that here too. Well, how can you begin? They say we have no land. You see, our rainfall is so short. Our forests have been denuded. You see, what can we do? Well, you have, unless you tackle these problems. But you think, I don't think the present government would be able to tackle this problem. Well, communists would wipe out more people than that is matter to my mind. You mean the remainder is equal to that? Yeah, we always do that sort of a thing, you know. But in this country, yeah, we always do. I mean, in war, you kill people, don't you? You are not sorry because you have killed so many people. Because you find it necessary because necessary to do so in order to safeguard your interest. So you really feel that this system is likely to collapse. Yes, I think it will. How soon? Well, pretty soon probably. My own people, very impatient. And I judge by my people. You see? And who are the lowest rung of the strata? You see, you know. If the foundation of a building begins to collapse, it is first the lowest strata that collapses. You think, you mean my own people are untouchable? They are untouchable. Now, are the communists working among them? No, they are not working because they have faith in me. I haven't said anything. So far. You see? But they have been asking me. You see? But harm is there. Yes, they have been asking me. And I have to give some answer someday.
बेसिकली वो जर्नलिस्ट देखा वो तभी का राजदीप लग रहा है नहीं
Knocking sweet at all.
तभी का राजदीप भाई टाइट रोप लाओ दोनों मेरा बैलेंस करके चलता हूँ अप्रेजल भी आ रहा है पर दिल तो हमारा है भारत में नहीं
Over this period, India has balanced a parliamentary democracy of over a billion people with a simultaneous transition to a multi-trillion-dollar economy.
Coming back to where India is it a parody account of democracy or is it democracy?
It is working in the incognito mode where you can not have any trace of history, any trace of misdeeds that you're doing. And the moment you close it, records are gone. That's the kind of nature India is currently in. And it is becoming more penetratingly divisive and political. Politics is division. It is meant to have either sides. But the divisiveness is so profound that one has to find oneself on either side. And the whole idea of neutrality becomes problematic. That's what India's political class is doing right now. They're really creating hyper-polarized issue while Adani is taking the taxes you are paying and becoming the richest Indian in the matter of years. I mean, this is one of the most this philanthropic exercise of government towards this rich people has remained really under the radar. I mean, tell me how many times people will engage on the issue of neoliberal assault on poor people, working class people, people in the rural areas, the agrarian communities, as opposed to somebody posing something on some Hindu, some Muslim, some issue. You will see that kind of the measurement of engagement. And this is a very sad stain that the current political dispensation is really doing a disfavor to Indians in general. I mean, they should talk about values, ideas. They should really talk about what's the next thing happening. But the people who should talk only about this are Shahs, Patels, Joshis. This is the kind of elan that has developed. Anything otherwise, that's the ghettoist topic you should talk about. Yeah, go and talk about, how XYZ Muslim person is this, XYZ Hindu is XYZ Dalit is this. I mean, why do we create a situation that allows for this kind of movement to exist. And that's why this divisiveness has created a safe passage for the elite class. 10,90,000, I repeat, 10,90,000 bank loans were waived off, is written off. Khatam. You and I paid for that. The small and medium entrepreneurs and business, they're almost at the verge of extinction. Yet, they don't have this courage because, middle class should actually join forces against this. But they are given this token of a certain nature that emotion pre-values money. And money becomes a guiding principle for India's political class. When we will understand, I think this is the kind of lesson.
Yeah. So the Indian democracy, and I also want to just simplify, a scholarly person. So most of the people in the comments, they are like, "Arey Tesla chalega, arey ye chalega, Tata chalega, Ambani nahi chalega, Adani nahi chalega. This is baniya hate." नहीं भाइयों, baniya hate ऐसा कुछ नहीं होता है. Adani और Ambani के साथ problem क्या है ना? They do not go with a unique selling point to the government saying help us. They see what the government is to sell and then they form a business around it. So this is crony capitalism.
I mean, एक बात
corruption और lobbying ही है मतलब.
I mean, see, one thing people should understand is बनिया hatred और जो बाकी चीज़ें हैं ना, उसमें तू कहाँ पर है जो डिफेंड कर रहा है अडानी को, अंबानी को? तेरे को क्या मिल रहा है उसमें से? प्रैक्टिकल बात करना, तेरे बटवे में या तेरे बैंक अकाउंट में कितना पैसा जा रहा है? अगर रियलिटी तेरी सिचुएशन रिफ्लेक्ट नहीं करती है तो समझना. बट यही है ना, एट द एंड ऑफ द डे द काइंड ऑफ कास्ट फ्रेटर्निटी दैट वर्क्स, people really deploy कि we need to defend a certain character of a society. If that crumbles, what happens? And what heart of a person will accept that a person having this massive wealth while the same individual of the same nation is on the streets begging for the food of the kid who she wants to send to school? If this doesn't disgust you, then that's the kind of a problem we are trying to direct our attention.
So, social anesthesia.
Yes.
Anesthetic हो गया आदमी. वही तो मैं ये तो see all the caste clans which support caste as part of Indian culture, they are basically cartels which don't break the law.
Correct.
It's like drug cartel, gun cartel, but they are not. But they are safe है. कोई कुछ करेगा नहीं.
We were, all of us, disturbed and shocked by the 15th film, by the movie Kashmir Files, that felt to us like a propaganda vulgar movie, inappropriate for an artistic competitive section of such a prestigious film festival.
And there is another fabricated angle to this whole conversation, which is that there's hate being propagated unfairly towards the Brahman Baniya community. And that hate is being currently, as we speak, seen on walls of JNU. Where people are like, Brahmans and Baniyas leave the campus. So I just want to know, what do you think about that?
See, I really don't know. I think one has to investigate what's going on in JNU. And JNU is really not India, it's just one of the campuses. And it really unduly gets attention, like our party, just because they are in Delhi.
Yeah.
And the lazy journalism just goes and captures it. But the question, if Brahman Baniya threat exists in society, I think people have to understand it's not the threat to the individual, it's not to the community, it's to the position, status, and privileges they hold on to. That's the kind of approach one has to take. Because if you're a Brahmin, declaring your Brahmin self without really accounting to it, there's going to be the critique of plebeians. It's going to be, it's natural. So is the Baniya. The heritage of Brahmin Baniya has been also of animosity. They are not like siblings,
Yes.
It's a divisive factor. Like a Baniya getting killed by a Brahmin from Maharashtra, Gandhi, is emblematic of how the situation is.
Brother, Papu is already late for prayers.
Oh God.
I just feel how much of a fool a community can be, even though after having an economic prowess, a control on money, still accept a inferior position to some Sanskrit chanting dude? I mean, how is that if
not rational?
And that's why the threat that we are noticing amongst people is not actually the threat towards a dominant community, it's actually towards oppressed community. And I think it's always, it's a misdirection attested towards it. We haven't seen caste atrocities on Baniyas. We have seen caste atrocities on Adivasis and Dalits. But again, it's this kind of victim Olympics that takes place. That I am more victim now, and so I should have a chance, and no one should speak, and I should only have the attention. What happens with Kashmiri Pandits, for example, that remains emblematic of the entire national story.
आप कश्मीरी पंडित हैं?
हाँ जी,
है ना जी. आपको लगता है कि हमारे साथ जेनोसाइड हुआ था कि क्या?
अब मैं आपको बताती हूँ. Every Kashmiri Pandit I've spoken to who has faced 1990 said this.
Now, what are you saying?
I'll tell you.
I want that answer. Did your parents live in a refugee camp?
My parents did not live in a refugee camp, but I'll tell you this. I'll tell you why.
I want you. आपके पेरेंट्स का, आपके पेरेंट्स कश्मीर को बोलने दो ना. नहीं.
Let us speak for ourselves.
No.
Don't make me or make us speak about and defend the film.
So this is this kind of a perpetual victimization that caste teaches you. How do I identify myself always? How the center of attention should be at me? How do I hog any form of attention towards me wherever I am? I think this obsessiveness of self is a very megalomaniac kind of situation that caste insecurity gives to people with the privileges of caste.
Yeah, it's this unfair attention to a problem that is non-existent.
I mean, they might make another film and make crores and crores of money.
Yeah,
they made the film from Kashmiri Pandits. This, whatever this thing is happening, or if that or not happening, at least you get a space, you get international attention. Yeah. So even a tear from a Brahmin woman's eye creates a national news, while a rape of a Surega Bhoot Mange doesn't even flinch an eye. Neighbors just also.
A rusted bed, the color of dried blood, it's all that remains of Bhayalal Bhoot Mange's home in Khairlanji, a small rice-growing village in Maharashtra's Bhandara district.
ये 29 सितंबर के वो निशानी है, वो मेरा से वो निशानी करके रखी है, वो जगह किसी ने छीनने को नहीं होना, इसलिए रखा है वो.
On that day 10 years ago, Bhayalal's wife Surekha, teenage daughter Priyanka and sons Roshan and Sudhir were pulled out of their hut at sunset by nearly 40 men, many of them neighbors, who had known the children since the day they were born. For the next 3 hours, Bhayalal's family was beaten with bicycle chains and iron rods and axed to death in a public spectacle. Their bodies were loaded on a bullock cart and thrown into a canal about 2 kilometers from the scene of violence. Surekha and Priyanka were allegedly gang raped. When Bhayalal, who escaped the mob by hiding in a nearby field, went to file a FIR at the local police station, they did not take his complaint seriously.
माझ्या सुद्धा कंप्लेंट नाही घेतला ठाण्यामध्ये गेलं तर 2 दिवस 29 तारखेला नाही 1 तारखेला गेलं पण नाही घेतला कंप्लेंट.
By then, much of the crucial evidence had been destroyed, setting the pattern for the rest of the investigations before the CBI stepped in. For instance, the post-mortem on the women was done without conducting a rape test, even though their bodies bore injury marks and Priyanka had been stripped naked. The victims were Buddhists from the Mahar caste, followers of Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, while their assailants were mainly Kunbis, an agricultural community which was given OBC status by former Maharashtra Chief Minister Sharad Pawar in the early 1990s. Bhayalal, whom we met at Diksha Bhumi in Nagpur, admits he was devastated by the verdict and felt betrayed by the state, but has not given up the fight for justice.
आम्ही सुप्रीम कोर्टात केस टाकलेले आहोत. उजळणे काम होतं, उजळणे कामाला आम्ही म्हणाले की यांना एट्रोसिटी एक्ट लावा, 164 कलम लावा, पण तसा त्याने केला नाही. सब दडपण्याचा प्रयत्न केला आहे प्रशासनाने. एट्रोसिटी एक्ट नाही लावले म्हणून आपल्याला थोडासा न्याय नाही मिळाला.
Bhayalal claims that the prosecution deliberately ignored the very open and crude narrative of discrimination his family faced as Dalits from Khairlanji's dominant castes. They resented Bhaiya Lal for owning 5 acres of productive land, which made him financially independent.
जलते क्यों थे कि उनसे ज़्यादा मैं फसल पानी निकालता था और मेरे बच्चे होशियार थे इसलिए वो जलते थे मेरे को.
And for trying to rise above his social status by educating his children. Roshan wanted to become a computer professional, Priyanka a police officer.
हमारे बच्चे शिक्षण वाले थे, होशियार थे, उनके नज़रों में चुपते थे. लड़के मेरे 11वीं में थे और उसके पीछे का भाई 13वीं क्लास में था. मेरी लड़की एनसीसी में थी, मैं पुलिस बनूंगी बोल रही थी.
Every attempt at upward mobility by the Bhootmanges was seen as a threat to an age-old caste order. Bhaiya Lal is convinced that the murders were a warning to every Dalit in the state who dared to challenge the supremacy of caste Hindus, a ground truth which the prosecution dismissed.
Suraj, another thing that you do is you kind of talk a lot about the economics of being in a certain caste and land, which is very missing in almost every marginalized caste in India. Would you like to elaborate on the topic and tell us exactly what is it that the marginalized community would love to achieve in this new democratic alliance of India?
I think, nothing would make more sense than having a condition that will create more economic equality. That's the ideal way to move forward. Once you have economic leverage, then you can really be in a position of negotiating. You can be in a position of asking and talking as equals. Alongside economics, of course, there's social and cultural capital that is necessary. I'm more concerned about why do Dalits continue to be victims in the society? And the answer is, they have not lost their vision of them being the owners of this country.
Yeah.
They have not lost the memories that keep on reminding them that they were once a ruling class of this country. This is their country. They very rightfully own. And that's why today, when I have to understand the Dalit condition, I have to look at what makes Dalit truly Indian is what you own in a country.
What stake you have.
What stake do you have? And Dalits, apart from the political rights, have no other rights. So my aim is that I would like to challenge the system by granting more economic resources to the marginalized communities. And one of that is by having land. Land is a very important commodity for one, to have a confidence of belonging to a nation. Two, it is a partly leveler in an otherwise unequal economic society. It is also a guarantee for one to fall back upon in case of emergency. And land is also something that really connects you to your roots. That's what you did. Yet, more than 80% of Dalits are deprived from a cultivable land. If they have their marginal farmers, which is less than hectares that what it really requires for a family to sustain. So Dalits really remain those people who don't have anything sizable as a community. And when you don't have anything, you become a rentier. Dalits are the kiraidars of India, outstead by the dominant caste landowners. What we're going to do is, we're going to go back to the original constitution principles, and this is one of the unfinished fights of Dr. Ambedkar, which was to grant the land rights to the Dalit population. Once you have land, then you can also exercise your position as someone who can talk, who can negotiate, who can really establish oneself as somebody who has certain material, so you don't feel that you are totally perpetually dependent. Now, I commit a crime on Dalit because I know that Dalit is dependent on me. If I know, if I punish him or her, she's not going to go anywhere. She's going to come back and ask for a job next day to me. Because there is a position of economic control, you can do the way, whatever you want, because they are not your subordinates, they are your serfs. In a feudal society, serf is someone who is related to the person who is controlling you into a relationship of slavery. And land is one of the ways. It's not the only way. Let me tell you, it's one of the ways. And it could lead us to gaining other capital. So land rights for Dalits should be one of the calls for liberation of Dalits.
There are 3 organizations that I feel I keep reading about them, I try and access their content, but there seems to be a sort of blackout towards them. And I'd like you to put light on the work these organizations do and why they exist. One is the cadre-based organization BAMCEF. So I'd like you to just put a little bit of light on what BAMCEF does and what's their work.
If you be an anti-casteist, I think that's a great organization to learn. If you are a privileged caste, that's a great place to access their content and really understand. It's really a mirroring experience. They have conventions all across, and they really propagate the messages of how a caste-free society should look like. They are radical in their content, mind you. If you have a faint heart, better to go when you are in a good health, mental or physical, because it's going to come with many bricks on your own, on your face. BAMCEF is actually run by, one side is Mishram, the other side is run by another group of people. And so it's a very diverse body that have its objectives of establishing what they identify as the rule of the natives. They have a concept of such nature, but
Mool
Nivasi. And the concept might be outdated, depending on one's interpretation. But what one can do really is to really get a hang of situation. Now, you see, BAMCEF is someone, they provide you an answer to a contemporary political, social situation that you will only realize a decade later. For example, Ram Janmabhoomi issue, Advani was taking Rath Yatra. The primary reason for him was not to go to the Ayodhya and do that. The primary intention for that Rath Yatra was to misdirect the attention from OBC reservation that the VP Singh government had given.
Yeah.
And by creating a attention towards this Rath Yatra, the consciousness of OBCs, who were the primary beneficiaries of Mandal, implementation of Mandal recommendations, these OBCs were then misdirected to go and follow the Advani Rath Yatra. It's an incredible situation. A Sindhi, a migrant from the Sindh province,
Sindh Karachi,
takes the backward castes and tries to claim on Ram. And one should ask, what is the relation between a Sindhi and Ram? What is a spiritual ritual worship for you? And that's what happens. If you're a Sindhi, you're not a Brahmin and you get marginalized. Advani is a good example of all the other budding Sindhis and the Banyas who are hoping to cut it through this chasm of political leadership. So, BAMCEF is something that really tells you how it's going to look like. On AAP, they have an appropriate statement. They said this is an organization you should be watchful for, because they are really propagating a view that will ascribe to Brahminism. It will really have its Banyan nexus, and that's what happened with Rajpal Gautam, the AAP minister, at the end of the day. So BAMCEF is something that will help you learn, and more importantly, unlearn many things. And I think it's a very exciting experience if you really are willing to, kind of gauge what they're doing. And because they talk so incredible things and interpreting history through a certain narrative, they become a threat, and that's why they're not represented enough. But I think it's a good experience if you can to go to those conventions. I was a child when I went, but since my young age, I've not had a time to. Hopefully, sometime.
That's the thing, right? For us, even to access BAMCEF's content is a hustle. I don't think we get everything that.
Yeah.
Every convention that's out there, we don't get it. The media has a total blackout on them. Whenever they plan something big like the RSS Gherao that they had planned. They didn't get permission for.
Yes, that
didn't happen. So there's been a blanket blackout on this movement, which has been old, very old movement doing cadre-based work. Similarly, there was an organization stemming out of Maharashtra called the Dalit Panthers.
For sure.
What do you know about the Dalit Panthers? Why did the Dalit Panthers got outruled? And why is there not enough talk about them today?
Again, this was the same. BAMCEF, for example, was started by 3 people. Kashiram, a Punjabi, Adina Bhana, a Rajasthani, and D.K. Kaprade, a Marathi. And these were all people from the marginalized caste. Preceding this moment, there was Dalit Panthers. Dalit Panthers were someone who were profoundly literal in their sense. They were beautiful poets. They were amazing writers who wrote short stories, who wrote commentaries, whose diction was so strong that it aroused a certain emotion in you. These were writers, basically. They were critiquing the caste atrocities that were taking place. Now, Rajadhani, here in Vikhroli, there was an incident where a Dalit woman was stripped naked and she was asked to walk across the village. And now India was celebrating its silver jubilee. Now Rajadhani said, a Dalit woman who is being forced to parade naked, the punishment is paltry. While you disrespect a lifeless flag of India, the punishment is manifold. So he said, what use is of this flag if it cannot protect the honor of a Dalit woman? Should then one use this flag and shove it in one's ass? This was Rajadhani, Golden Jubilee, claiming this. All hell broke loose. How the hell you disrespect flag? And they missed out the point that he was pointing out to a disrespect accorded to a Dalit woman. Nobody paid attention to that, but they paid attention to a lifeless flag. That's the kind of strong position that the Panthers took. Then the poet like Namdev Desal, who grew up in a red light area, who was a taxi driver, and then a bank employee, J.V. Pawar, and many others, Arjun Dawli and so forth, the people that, the mostly Bombay-centered organization. They draw inspiration from Black Panthers, and they were radical. What they did effectively is, they said, if you commit violence, we can also perhaps exercise our right to defend. And so when Dalit Panthers were on rise, there was a scare that Panthers are coming, and this people in villages, especially the feudals, would be shit scared because this is going to be something. And people in the villages would be disciplined because we know this guy is a panther. And if we mess up with him or his family, we're gonna get Panthers come down and beat the shit out of us. That was the position. Ramdas Athole, today's minister, was a panther on the street. These are all people coming out of politics from the street. They got police batons on their back, so many sentences, so many cases, yet fought for the dignity, fought for the rights, and really fought for what really Constitution meant. In that, they espoused the values of Buddha, they espoused the values of Ambedkar, they espoused the value of Marx, they espoused the value of a certain revolution. This was a very amazing, diverse body of people. The Dalit Panthers, mind you, had an incredible feat for the time, and then because of state pressure and infighting, they kind of had a fallout. But their appeal was to the world. After Ambedkar, this was the group that looked at the world and sought solidarity.
Yeah.
But that really couldn't happen until earlier this year.
Oh, you're taking the picture?
Video.
Oh, video! I want rights. I want an Academy Award.
50 years we celebrated, and I got some Black Panther comrades to come down to Nanded, where we had celebration of Dalit and Black Panthers, where we really put them on stage together. And my plan is larger. I would like to gather the leaders of Black Panthers and leaders of Dalit Panthers, meet in India as well as in the US. The work is undergoing.
And when they kind of must be finding out about what's going on in India, they must be like, wow, this is, wow.
It's so interesting, Kunal, because, prior to this, we had no opportunities to engage with global allies, right? Yeah. But the position, and the question is, why should you seek global allies? Because our local allies, our enemies, they should instead be our allies. But they are hell-bent on creating a more intolerant system for us.
Correct.
So that's why there's a natural moment we go, and now they are like open. They're like, they would like to know, Eva DuVernay, for example, is coming out with a film. Yeah. And for the first time ever, Ambedkar is going to be shown on Hollywood screen.
Yeah.
Woo, Bollywood. And I'm not even expecting anything from you. And don't you ever dare to mimic that.
Yeah.
You have lost the opportunity. Let Hollywood do that.
Yeah.
And if you do that, I'm going to come after you.
Well, legally. Legally. बताने का नहीं है. करने का है. Okay, I've got also before we break into more serious discussions, I've got something, a fan who is asked a lot of questions of you. So,
Suraj Yengde, caste privilege. Suraj Yengde at the Harvard Kennedy School, critical caste theory. Critical caste theory.
समझ गए अंकल, आपका सेंटिमेंट समझ गए. ज़्यादा चिंता मत कीजिए. इधर लड़खड़ा गए, आपका फाइल बन जाएगा.
So this professor who comes from this, community.
He's an NGO.
He's an NGO, but he comes from this marginalized community, right, of 3.5% people who hold, I think, 50-60% of properties and stuff like that. Why does he have such a wider view on caste than you? Why do you think so? Why do you think he thinks he's more capable?
Maybe because he's older.
Vintage.
That's the only thing I can understand. But it's okay. Everybody should have you. Because we believe in exchange of ideas.
Correct.
We believe in a moment of dialogue. We don't believe in moments of cancelling. We don't support that. No. But the dialogue can happen only when you're willing to fend off your own ears of castes. You have to be ready to be humbled. And if you're ready to do that,
come on.
We can talk. But until then,
no chance.
तुमको सनवॉक दिखने का सनवॉक?
हाँ, मूनवॉक.
अरे नहीं रे, सूरज कहाँ से मूनवॉक करेगा बे? सूरज तो मजाक कर दिए. हम तो सनवॉक कर रहे हैं.
We've spoken about the work that you've done in the past, but there's a lot on the plate for the future. What is the project that you are working on currently, and when do they see the light?
I want to contribute to India's population metrics.
Okay.
First.
That's
jokes apart. I mean, I'm actually currently working on 4 book projects and 1 thesis. My supervisor will remind me that I have to submit it. I should be submitting anytime.
So just rephrase yourself. I'm working on 1 thesis and 4 books.
So that's a good idea. I'm working on 1 thesis, 4 books. The thesis is at Oxford, and I hope to finish it. It's in the final stage. The other 4 book projects, one is Caste, A New History of the World. I'm looking at the scope of the globe and looking at through the caste. The other book is Biography of Dr. Ambedkar, which my publisher is also, I should be finishing sometime, but it will take some time. Other is I'm working on Kanshiram's speeches and writings and trying to bring out a compendium so people can access his amazing work. And Raja Dali, who also remains inaccessible in English. So these are like 4 book projects that are on my table. And I hope to get to at least 2 of them very soon, which is Kanshiram and the first book, Caste, A New History of the World. Otherwise, work will continue, the work on the global solidarity, scholarship and research, participating in various public dialogues around and creating an Ambedkarite embassy in each part of the world where we'll really have an understanding of caste as well as anti-caste societies. So other societies who are undergoing similar circumstances have a certain template to at least look at and develop a novel strategy to fight oppression and discrimination.
Yep, that's a lot of work on your plate. Thank you, Dr. Suraj Yengde, for giving me time. This was amazing, and it was planned for a long time, but thank you so much for making it. And it was really amazing chatting with you.
Thank you, Kunal. Jai Bhim to you and Jai Bhim to all the crew.
Jai Bhim.
Jai Bhim.
No. Wait.
And I will tell you why. There are some serious fundamental problems with reservation in India. Number one, if reservation is about creating a level playing field, why do we need it after a certain point? Reservation has given birth to a new kind of structural crisis. Certain seats have become untouchable.
But it's been an amazing conversation that the both of us have had on the subject of caste, and it just feels incomplete that we are not discussing reservation to people who think that caste discussions are only complete when reservation is discussed. So we have nothing to say anymore, I think, on reservation, but we should play this clip so that people make their views on reservation. Not for the faint-hearted.
यदि देश का विकास करना है, देश को महान बनाना है, तो संख्या की गिनती करो और ब्राह्मणों को कहो भाई तुम्हारी 3.5 है, तो ले लो 3.5। हमने बिहार में जब ये घोषित किया तो एक ब्राह्मण हम लोगों से झगड़ा करने लगा। वो झा नाम का जो ब्राह्मण था जब झगड़ा करने लगा तो हमने उसको पूछा क्यों झगड़ा कर रहे हो भाई, तेरी संख्या 3.5 है, तेरे को हम 3.5 देने की बात कर रहे, तेरा झगड़ा क्या है भाई? तू 3.5 वाला 50% लेना चाहता है क्या? $3.5 वाला तो 50% लेना चाहता है, 3.5 वाला 3.5 वाला नहीं लेगा, चुप हो गया। तो 100% रिजर्वेशन से क्या होगा? 100% लोगों को 100% रिजर्वेशन हो जाएगा, मामला सारा खत्म। महाराष्ट्र के मराठा को भी मिलेगा, गुजरात के पटेलों को भी मिलेगा, और नॉर्थ इंडिया के जाटों को भी मिलेगा। अगर लोकतंत्र है तो सभी लोगों को अधिकार मिलना चाहिए। भारत ब्राह्मणों के बाप की जागीर है क्या? ऐसा तो नहीं कहा जा सकता। इसलिए इन सारी समस्याओं का, खास तौर पर आरक्षण की सारी समस्याओं का समाधान करने का तरीका है 100% रिजर्वेशन। बोलती बंद, कोई भी नहीं बोलेगा। और भारत सरकार कहती है मुसलमानों की संख्या 15% है, तो मुसलमान भी भारत के शहरी है, मुसलमान भी भारत के नागरिक है, वो यहीं पैदा हुए हैं, उनका जन्म यही है, उनके माँ बाप, उनके बाप दादा का भी जन्म यही हुआ है, उनकी संख्या 15% है, उनको भी 15% रिजर्वेशन होना चाहिए। जब 100% रिजर्वेशन होगा, मुसलमानों को उनके संख्या के अनुपात में होना चाहिए। अगर प्रत्येक को संख्या के अनुपात में प्रत्येक को दे दिया जाए तो किसी का भी झगड़ा नहीं रहेगा और सबको न्याय मिलेगा। और सबको न्याय मिलेगा तो ये जो अशांति रिजर्वेशन के नाम पर है खत्म हो जाएगी। ऐसा किया जा सकता है।
Shut up ya Kunal.
Shut up ya Kunal.
चुपना।
Shut up ya Kunal.
Shut up ya Kunal.
Ya Kunal.
Another thing, Suraj, I want to ask you is that can you equate casteism with racism that happens globally and which is a global issue that every country faces in some level or the other?
Yeah, of course. It's a situation of marginalization, situation of oppression, situation of perpetual assault on one's dignity, on one's character, on one's right to live with peace and non-violence. So certainly when we look at the societies that have color-based racist oppressions, we see similarities existing in other parts of the world too. However, caste is not race. Race is an outcome of a modern capitalist force that really thought out. It's a fictitious identity that was germinated somewhere in Europe and then transferred into a new lingo, which then became imported idea of America. An American kind of idea of racism becomes, well, caste has a different register, yet both have similar mothers where they grew up during the colonial, as a modern definition of caste as castas, race as rasas, come from Iberia. And so what people always misunderstand is when we talk about casteism and racism, they think we are equating caste and race, which is not how it is. What we are trying to say is we are saying the outcome of these two pernicious institutions produce such a tragic existence in society. Whereas the register of caste is much old because it's a Brahmanical jati system, which people justify as being something that was there to formalize occupation system. But one question should ask, if it's meant to be justifying the formal occupations, why are Brahmins always doing the top jobs and why are Dalits always doing the lower jobs, even by the virtue of their birth? Nobody wants to ask that, but they want to defend. Whereas racism here is a very color-based order that is demonstrating itself as something of a community who is differentiated just because they are born with different physical characteristics, and now it has become a different form of racism, and it's iterating. But what do we do with racism when a dominant caste person claims a victim position in a racist society? That's the challenge of how we see it. So that's why we need a racial caste distinction or a caste race, and that was existing in the 1920s, 30s. In American history, I wrote a paper called American Caste, where I traced the origins of American foundation even before racism was actually caste, the way we understand as a society. So that's the kind of, and caste exists globally. When you come to India, it becomes Brahmanical castes, Hindu caste system. If you go to America, it becomes racial caste. If you go elsewhere, it becomes ethnic caste or tribal caste. But caste as a metaphor, as a structural institution, exists almost in every other ancient societies that we have today.
Just like reality TV show, the worst ideas can be implemented in every nook and corner of this world.
That's true.
यार अभी मेरे को आप समझ में आया, मैंने पूरे इंटरव्यू में डॉक्टर सूरज की जगह सूरज।
अरे बहुत अच्छी बात है यार, क्या बात कर रहे हो, हायरार्की को तो खत्म करना है।
भाई मैं मंडल साहब के ट्वीट से डरता हूँ बस।
तो शांति से जरा थोड़ी देर बैठिए और सोचिए, अगर हम करें तो करें क्या, बोले तो बोले क्या।
ब्राह्मण सर्वोच्च था, सर्वोच्च रहेगा।
You have a Michael Jackson.
Michael Yengde.
जय भीम बाबा, जय भीम।